All right, we are live. Black Box Radio. I am in the box. It's a beautiful November afternoon in Baltimore City. I want to welcome everyone to Black Box Radio. And tonight, this is the Corner, Community Corner with Queen and Antoine. Antoine stepped out for a second, but we're here and we have a special guest, and we are talking about voting. So that's the subject for tonight. I'm Queen. I'm a host at Black Box Radio. We are a multimedia platform illustrating Black excellence. So we reside in Baltimore City. We platform Black people. We expose Black genius, and we definitely want to humanize our experience in America. But more than anything, we invite everyone to our show, and as you can see, we have Amy. Oh, I don't want to say your last name wrong.
It's
Is it
Cruise.
Cruise? Huh? Cruise?
Cruise. It rhymes with juice.
Oh, I love it. Amy Cruice. And Amy works with the ACLU of Maryland, but we're actually going to talk about voting more than where she works. She advocates, that is an advocacy organization. But I'm going to let her introduce herself. But we have Amy. But first, my homeboys here, my partner, Antoine Qualls L, my brother. Introduce yourself to the people.
Uh, Good afternoon, Baltimore. Good evening, Baltimore. Antoine Qualls, trying to help Baltimore, helping oppressed people excel. Uh, Community voice for those formerly impacted around red line barriers and stigmas that challenge the process of you empowering yourself. And that hope what we tend to do is show the exuberant fire of talent that manifests when empower and change is behind you. 811 Cathedral, come any Tuesday, drop in, sit down, learn something, take something, give something, but most of all, take back and be a change in your community.
Excellent. I love that. All right. So we have Amy Cruice, rhymes like juice, with us tonight. And welcome to the box. Welcome to Community Corner. And this is a pleasure to talk to you about something that's so important. And National Election Day is tomorrow. Guys, National Election Day is tomorrow. Use the tool in your toolbox. Vote. Okay, Amy, introduce yourself. Welcome to the box. Thank you for coming through.
Thank you. And first of all, thank you, Queen, so much for this platform for the show. And then Antoine, thanks for inviting me to join you all here. Since the very first time that we talked and started working together, I just had the most respect for the types of work that you're doing, and the ways that you also like show love and give people their flowers in real time. And so I'm just so glad to be here with both of you and excited to talk. So my name's Amy Cruice. I'm the legal program manager and election protection director at the ACLU of Maryland. I'm also a part of a coalition that I'm going to be speaking a lot about tonight probably, which is Expand the Ballot. It's Expand the Ballot, Expand the Vote. And so we'll get into that a little more. But I've been with the ACLU for 22 years now, and 20 years ago started working on voter disenfranchisement, kind of unpacking or dismantling the voter disenfranchisement laws that we had, that we still have, but we've had, and they were really bad 20 years ago. So we can talk a little bit about the history, but that's a little bit about me, and I'm just really glad to be here.
Well, I am glad you're here. We're glad to have you. I want to, voting right now, it's like right now, we keep on the TV the ads. You go outside, you see the signs, and we've been through a primary, and now we're here. Final vote tomorrow, guys, tomorrow. But we kind of want to talk about voting and kind of take it back, like the backstory and where we are and how did we get here, and the percentage that's going on in Maryland. Is voting getting better? Because I know the last elections we've had low turnout. So how are we able to track that type of data and then inspire people to vote at the same time?
Sure. I mean, that's a really great question. I think that the numbers are still horrifically low in terms of turnout. Mm-hmm. In the whole state of Maryland. Baltimore is similar. And but I don't know how we are going to increase voter participation until we deal with voter apathy. And as long as we have these systems in place, whether they're actually by law or, as we'll talk about, kind of the legacy of a history of disenfranchisement laws, we are going to have people who don't feel like voting. It's kind of built in that people will feel like voting isn't. What's the point of voting? If the whole system was rigged, including the voting laws themselves, why would anybody give themselves to that process or believe in that system if it itself has all these requirements of people? So to me, I think we have to first ensure that every single person has the right to vote. It does not matter if you are in jail, in prison, does not matter what any conviction it was, any disqualifier there. Everyone should have the right to vote. And the state has the duty to educate everyone, to make sure that everyone knows not only that they have the right to vote, but it's valued, and that the state's doing, and by state, I kind of mean the prison system, the local jails, the state board of elections. And people need to feel like their vote is wanted, it's counted. And, this probably goes even into elected, into partisan politics, where we see, and this is really a little bit outside of my role at the ACLU, but you see campaigns that only focus on, I think they call them high propensity voters. So it's the people who voted every year, the people who have the strongest neighborhoods of turnout. So they do door to door there, but then they completely ignore neighborhoods that may not have a history of voting as often. And I think as long as we keep having these systems that are showing either on paper or in the way they move that certain neighborhoods don't matter to them, certain people don't matter to them, that sort of thing, why are we going to expect somebody to wake up in the morning and be like, oh, voting seems like something that's worth my time, is actually going to do anything, that sort of thing. So I think to get to apathy, we have to make sure that we're doing more to show that we really do want everybody to vote and we want everybody to participate.
Wow. So you said voter apathy. That's what I got. Okay. Well,
I say that, and I also, when people use voter apathy as an excuse, I always roll my eyes, because we're hearing that when we go into jails and prisons, which we're so the Expand the Ballot Coalition has now met with or toured 17 state or local run jails and prisons across the state over the last few months. It's a very impressive body of work that the coalition has led. And when we go into some of the jails, they tell us people here don't want to vote. There's apathy. They don't care. They don't want to vote. And so what we've seen is when we have our coalition members who are Black, who are formerly incarcerated themselves, and they can speak to why they vote, why it matters to them, their communities, their families, and maybe use some other examples that they've heard of from people who have expressed why they want to vote. It makes a world of difference. So I'm glad that you paused at the voter apathy, because I actually don't believe that, because that seems like it's blaming the person, right, versus the system.
In a way, it does, because I think a lot of the time, and it's not a blame that's malicious, it's a blame that's like a passive blame, but it still comes to the point that you haven't done something, and really it's not that way. But I think too, and I know I'm going to get a little volatile, I think the system is also incestuous. It makes you, like, if you don't vote, then you have these policies, you have people in place who might not represent you, and then here all of these policies, it just continues. Then you have a system of criminal justice under that policy. They all work together. They're so incestuous. And so since folks see that and they feel it in their families and they feel it for generations, it's really hard. I think that's what I was going to say about voter apathy, is that the people are traumatized in a lot of ways from how incestuous the system is. But we still have to come up, though. You still have to fight, and fighting to me starts with voting. It's a tool, and we must utilize the tool. And I don't think that tool should be controlled by the state. It should be an automatic. You vote, You're alive, you breathe, you vote.
Right.
And let's set a system around that. What I think that works. So there are states that just allow you to vote. Am I correct? And nothing can take your right to vote. There are states like that in the union.
Yes, I think it's Vermont and Maine, but I think, Antoine, you may know the two states that have never really disenfranchised everyone.
Yeah, it's Vermont and Maine. And over the last, like since 2019, Washington, D.C., well, District of Columbia been added to that. And the thing I'm looking at, on one side of the street is the District of Columbia, and the other side is Maryland. And how powerful of a red line on one side, your rights are empowered, and on another side, if you get arrested, all comes with the other red line measures that birth out of the mother, like the mother hammer, because with these cities allowing and doing these things, you have millions of people and generations of people who've been like bombarded and then not having a real major concern to then trick themselves to disbelief, just as I did. Vote for what? Why? But there's one time that we was on a call, he was like, every one vote is every one power. So, the one person that vote, that's one power. So if two of y'all vote, that's two powers, three of y'all. And I just started thinking that if we could get hundreds, then that means 100 that wasn't. Now we have the ability to get them to the polls, and that's 100 that now adds on to. So
we have to scale it. It's important to scale this voting thing, and just get people to understand that some of this stuff is it seems so macro, but it's really micro in your life. It's something that you have to do on a daily, not daily, but monthly or whenever it comes up, annually. We have to vote. And so, in Maryland, how long has felons or ex-felons been allowed to vote? Is that 2016?
2016 was the biggest change that we saw in the law, and that was when I believe it was 44,000 Maryland residents were given the right to vote back by law. And I think there were 20,000 of those 44,000 who were in Baltimore. So that's the biggest change in the law. But if you go all the way back to 2002, which is when I started working on this, I was part of a coalition then called the Maryland Voting Rights Restoration Coalition, which was founded by Doc Cheatham and NAACP and Tara Andrews and John Willis and Hassan Giordano and Dr. Sherilyn Eiffel were all part of the coalition. It was a pretty small coalition, but we were small but mighty. And we started chipping away then, but it's really, we knew we were getting nowhere, but just to show like how bad it was and how little we got, it was something like there were people who were permanently disenfranchised in Maryland. Like a large number of people permanently disenfranchised because of the sentence that they were given from something that happened in the past. But then there were another set of, it was basically all based on the offense. And so there's a second set of rules that were at the first time that you were convicted, you would lose your right to vote until you finished your sentence, which was very confusing because they included restitution, they included probation, everything. And it was very confusing to figure out when that, when you're actually done. And then for your second, if you had a second offense, it would then be a 3-year waiting period from the date when you ended your sentence, which was impossible for anybody to keep track of. But the horrible thing was that was the improvement. Like we improved to something like that in 2002. And of course we were fighting for something, much more robust, but that's what the legislature, had it in them to do. And then I think it was 2007, 50,000 people were reenfranchised by a bill that Governor O'Malley signed. I don't remember the details of that. And then it was 2016, as we talked about, when when everyone on probation and parole were given their right to vote back. And then in 2021, our next kind of legislative victory was the Value My Vote Act. And what that did is create some standards for voting in jails and prisons. So before, there really wasn't anything requiring the state board or the local jails or the state-run prison system to actually provide information, ensure that people have equal access, or nowhere near equal, let alone equity, but equal access if you're in jails and prisons to vote. And so we now have anybody in jail or prison who are serving a pretrial or serving a misdemeanor sentence has the right to vote. But we have a system where you can imagine they don't have equal access to all of the ways that we do to vote. Or it takes a lot longer, the mail-in ballot process and that sort of thing. So, I mean, that's a little bit of the history of disenfranchisement and the progress we've made recently. We still have people who are currently serving sentences for felony convictions cannot vote by law. We need to change that. And then on the books or on the, by law, I think we will be in the right place, but we have a lot of undoing to do with this history of people thinking, the history. And I think it's intentional. One thing I wish I had better words to explain this, but inaction or failure to act is
just as intentional as
just as intentional and just as much as a harmful action. So failing to undo the harms caused by that amount of disenfranchisement for that many years is the same as saying, let's let it continue. So if you're not telling people, you're deciding not to tell people. And that is really problematic. One other thing I'll say, and then I'll stop on this train of thought. But Dr. John Willis with the University of Baltimore did some research back in the mid 2000s, who found the devastating impact that this law had on Baltimore City's neighborhoods. And he had taken down to the census block level, and the block level is even smaller than a district or whatever, just really small, few block radius. And it showed that, and as you were saying, Queen, about it's not, it sounds macro, but it's really micro.
Yeah.
It found that when a neighborhood had if a neighborhood had a certain number of residents who were currently incarcerated, what it showed is that even their family members who were not incarcerated were less likely to vote, and in some often at times not voting. And I'm not saying that that's the case for all families and all communities or anything like that, but what they were finding were entire neighborhoods that had really low turnout or really low voter registration numbers. And that's how the micro becomes macro. And, I think, again, it's intentional. Absolutely. And nobody's doing it. Only community-based organizations are doing anything to change it.
And that's right there. You're saying something like you see how the pattern affects the family also. But then if we really look at it and see how incestuous the system, we got to look at the services that come into the neighborhood, the resources. So if we see all of that, I bet we can see a correlation to lack of service, lack of fresh food, lack of neighborhoods that are decaying. So there's a whole incestuous trauma that's put on these folk who now say, why vote? And then while they're going through the trauma, you're telling them have hope, and they're hurting. So I think I hear what you're saying, but I think that is where we are with Baltimore. It's we look at just the layer of why they're not voting and the pattern of it, but why the pattern? So, because we're looking at effects, but that why, if we go after that why, then the effect would change.
Yeah.
We go after the effect. You get what I'm saying, Amy? You hear where I'm at, Twan?
No, I do. And I'm tempted to ask you and Antoine to, share a little bit about why you think it's important to vote, and also what we need to do, some of those things that we need to do so that voting and everything else people can feel more of a meaningful change in their lives and that sort of thing.
And I looked at like for a long time because like I was like, man, I ain't with none of that stuff, But then as maturity levels of citizenship and understanding what I knew and like what people fought for years, and then like how we live, like you said, I watched and I grew up in it, watching the community go to the rec center or the grandmothers and all that voting and having us down there, we playing football, touch or whatever, and relationships was built and things like that. But then I also watched as communities got dwindled down and like you said, incarcerations rose, that more and more services left, more and more reasons to have an input in the community came non-existent. Exactly. So they started, we're going to put this in, add this on, vote a box, such and such. And people didn't even know because they wasn't caring, they wasn't paying attention. And then they had a lack of like interest. So in the process of doing this in the first time when I went, because I was still on parole and things of this nature in 2015, they was like, you not registered to vote. And I was like, we did all that when I first came home. Here's the voter's card right here, but then it was like, well, this is not the address and such and such. So, and at that point, I was like, here we go with the BS again.
Right.
And, somebody was like, breathe, start over, and let's go over to the machine and see what happened. And when I went and did that, I was able to go all the way through. And I was like, what? So, and I started telling guys and just getting these experiences, but it made me more and more, what else am I supposed to be doing that I'm not, because I just don't know and I never even enlightened into it, and being at the bottom and having these relationships and these discussions, and some of the greatest powerful discussions about politics come off of corners, barbershops, bullpens, things of that nature, debates and drug affiliated houses and who doing what and why they keep locking us up and how we got to duck and dodge. But because the conviction said like, we can take this from you in 3 years, like you said, it was like 3 years, and then we looking at everything. Oh, that's one case, but then I got 9 cases behind me that all might say 3 years and can't get expunged and can't do this. So it start other numbers up. Then you're like, you know what? I ain't gonna never come off, so I'll with it, And I always say when we first start like doing this work, what is it that's happening in your life that made a prevalent point that changed the legislation that you can show somebody that this is why they need to go vote? And on a good day, they might be sleeping good, get up 8 o'clock in the morning and go pull a lever or be around a bunch of people when they know they don't like being claustrophobic around people early in the morning.
You said claustrophobic.
So it's all these things, but it gives an experience of what everyone went through. Like I was saying in the beginning, in the 1800s, women couldn't vote, but they created like a national alliance that went on, that became a retroactive power movement all across, with like 8 million women, like all came together across American states and made sure that the right for equal opportunities for women to vote. And then, like they say, it wasn't even about the equal freedom. It was like of them being women and the process of things domestically that they deal with. And I was like, wow. So doing this work, I done learned so much other stuff that I was never taught. My family, like, I talked to certain ones and I have a clue. They think like, man, he talking out there again. Boy, you need to run for be a politician. I'm like, nah, I ain't trying to be no politician. I'm just trying to know and understand what goes on around me so I can know why these laws come in place, why these voters and these delegates and all these and things of this nature are there for assistance, but no one's telling us. But then, like, certain things are put on ballots, we're not going, so we don't know what's on the ballot.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, that white women were actually part of why we were given the right to vote was because white men were afraid of black men voting and needed to outnumber through white women getting the right to vote. That's not a part of history that's lost on me. And I guess while I'm recognizing my own racial identity as a white woman, I'll just want to, again, thank you all for sharing the space with me. And another thing that's not lost on me is that as a white woman talking about the work of a Black-led, directly impacted, formerly incarcerated-led coalition, I take it very seriously and would normally pass along an opportunity to speak on a radio show or some other platform to one of our other partners. And it was because the invitation came directly from Antoine to me that I wanted to honor that and respect the relationship and the work that we've done together. And so it's not something that I feel like has a clear answer on how to handle such an invitation. But what I will do is make sure that my time spent here, is in honoring kind of what you were wanting, Antoine, in this conversation. And so just trying to bring some of, my honesty and the perspective that I've had and has been informed. And I owe that, to a lot of our partners. And then one other thing I wanted to say about I don't really know why I care about voting rights the way that I do, because on the surface, the two-party system isn't for me. Like I'm very rarely super excited about a candidate, even at the, local all the way up. Have a lot of friends will be mad at me when they hear that, but it's true. And so it's more that it more gets at that what you said, Antoine, about like why it must matter. Otherwise, they wouldn't try to keep other people from doing it. It must matter if they've intentionally taken it away. And it must matter if, the amazing women and men and others who've come before us who have fought and some have died for this. And so I feel like some of that is just a belief and a heart thing that I know this matters, even if when I'm looking at the ballot, it's not like the most exciting choice I've made of this week.
I like that. Well, Amy, first I want to say that we really appreciate you coming through. I'm glad Antoine invited you. And information is colorless, and so we platform Black people, and we are Black centered, but information isn't Black centered. Information is something that everyone should had access to, and it can be delivered from anybody. So we do appreciate you coming on. We really do. And I wanted to say also something about, like Antoine said, women's suffrage, because what I do notice too with that is that the population was very different then. There were plenty more white people in this country, so the women would help to control the vote with white women, because they didn't definitely do it to get more Black women, to get Black women.
Right.
Yeah, so if it, the number said that you had a population that could vote with you and control the vote. So that was really when we look at everything I see, unfortunately, done in society was done for the protection of whiteness. We have to be very honest, and to protect that whiteness, you look at the numbers, you look at the percentages, you look at, okay, there's more white people in this country, and if I add more white women, then I have more control of the vote, and we become a voting bloc that's particularly unstoppable, unless the demographics start to shift. So here we are in 2022 with the shift.
Right.
We have a demographic shift. So now we see entrenched politics. Like, I'm going to keep it this way. This is how it is. No new intervention. We're not ready. This is what we see. We see demographics coming and folks not wanting to change. But then change is happening anyway, because So that's how the world works. The universe cleanses itself, and now we see where we are. And so I wanted to say that about women's suffrage is not only that it wasn't suffrage, it was calculated suffrage.
Sure.
By the ruling class. It's always been, and then whatever they do, what they do, they put on pedestals. Okay, this was an amazing movement. Not saying really what the movement was about. So we have to understand where America is, but that's the most important thing is that you do vote. And Amy, you said it. Who works this hard to make you for you not to do it? So if someone's working this hard, there's reasoning. And I don't think it's going to save African people, to be honest, but I think it definitely is a tool in our toolbox. And that once we do that, though, we must groom leaders. We have we have to have leaders that come out that understand what being Black centered is, and understanding even Black plight, because policy is not really should be colorless. Also, it should apply to folks from a stance that's not just color based. Also, so that's what I wanted to say about vote because somebody else is they want it more than you want it. So take it away. Just take it away.
And like always looking at the number base of like around, because we still in the suffrage base, because out of every 5 people, it's only counted as 1 person. And then when you put the numbers of ex-offenders that's on that got restored, by how many really understand to go and do it. And like Amy, like you said, that was one of like my empowering thing was to go back inside and see guys, and then like we explained this to them, and then finding out, like me and Nicole was finding out, people were already registered, but we just had to update the information so that like when they getting out, then we like, bro, as you getting out, make sure it go to an address that your family gonna send it to you, so that this can happen, and looking at so many levels of stuff now that I say like it's a dominated trickery game to always keep us at a disadvantage, to never come up. But the voices of power, them like set up and known that we can come together and we can make a change instantly. But with a ripple effect, continue to keep going and keep going and keep going. That's that becomes the second why. After we understand how we need to change it and then come together to move out with the numbers, does the ripple effect of what happens continue to keep going and keep going and keep going?
Well, there's a ripple effect outward, and then there's a ripple effect inward, where when you recognize your power, when you feel your power, when you use your power and you feel the effects of it, I think it just creates more, right? So it's this ripple effect of your own internal power, which we all have. There's the external power, but if everyone realizes their own power, and I think Queen, as you were saying, I think the more you see people who voting is like one of those things that for some people, if they've never voted before, let's say they're older and they've never voted before, that first time can be a significant step that might open up. Like you said, maybe I'll run, maybe I'll get more involved. Maybe I'll go to the city council meeting. Maybe I'll write to or call my city council person. Maybe I'll run. Maybe I'll go to the school board thing or whatever it is. And I think when you start to feel that and you start to recognize your own power, that can be unstoppable for a lot of people. And so I do think that that's also the stepping stone that you were just mentioning.
Absolutely.
That definitely voting. Okay, so tomorrow, what is expand? Let's talk about expand the ballot. Let me see.
Expand the ballot campaign.
Expand the vote coalition.
Well, I should start. Yeah, well, I should start, mentioning and reminding people that so tomorrow is election day, and all across Maryland, the polls are open from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. And if you're not registered to vote, you can register to vote at your polling site. And you can also vote at the same time. So you can go in, you can register vote, and you can vote. So nobody's too late. Everybody who's listening, if you're a resident of Maryland, you can go vote.
Bravo.
So definitely spread the word about that. If people, and we've been trying to get the word out to jails and prisons as well, and I'll talk about that in a second, but because people who are released tonight, tomorrow, they can go register to vote and vote. So that's just something that's really exciting, given this is the pairing between who's eligible and same day registration. So we no longer have like a deadline that people have missed. So Expand the Ballot has done, if I may, do you want me to tell you a little bit about what we've been doing this year? Okay. So I'm very, very proud, as I could see Antoine was smiling all big when Expand the Ballot was mentioned. Expand the Ballot is definitely a small but mighty, and more, it's, just the way we work together is just something that I would love to see in other coalition spaces. But it starts with just being unapologetically led by our directly impacted partners, who are the partners I mentioned before. So we have 3 main organizations that founded Expand the Ballot Coalition and continue to lead it, which are Out for Justice, which is run executive director by Nicole Hansen-Mundell. And then we have Maryland Justice Project, whose executive director is Monica Cooper. And then Life After Release, which is run by Kiana Johnson. And then we have Hope, run by Antoine Quarles, and Freedom Fighters, run by Joshua Hatch. And so we have our coalition set up so that it is led by those organizations, which are led by formerly incarcerated people who can, have lived it. And who was Kiana Johnson just recently said, those closest to the problem are closest to the solution. And I believe that in every, even in speaking about the issues. So the coalition is also made up of other organizations like the organization I work for, the ACLU, Common Cause Maryland, League of Women Voters, League of Conservation Voters, Job Opportunities Task Force, and Disability Rights Maryland. And those organizations are there as a supportive role in a lot of ways. So some of the work that we've done in this year, we've taken on a lot and we've accomplished a lot. And one is the tours and meetings that we've had with the jails and prisons across the state. So the Value My Vote Act was passed in 2021. But there was not enough information to know if the local jails and prisons and the boards of elections were actually taking it seriously, and if they were actually building an infrastructure inside their jails and prisons to ensure that voting was provided, that voter information was provided to everybody inside and on a regular basis. So we thought, let's have these conversations ourselves. We need these relationships, and we just need to figure out how this is landing across the state. We have 8 state-run jails and prisons where there are eligible voters, and then every county has at least 1 local detention center. So we were meeting with, so we've met with 17 state and local run facilities, and either toured and or met with the administration there. And what we have found is that it's all over the board. We have places that are doing a pretty remarkable job at getting out information and registering voters. So one county, the county I live in, Anne Arundel County, their Ordnance Road facility, they have almost 50% of their population they registered. Which is not like even what you find when you go door to door in a neighborhood, right? That's a pretty high percentage of people. And they credit the warden there, Warden Klein, will tell you that it was because of Joshua Hatch from Freedom Fighters that they were able to have that success, because he went in and spoke to people and inspired people in a way that no prison or jail an administrator, case manager, anybody could really reach. And that made a giant difference. And in some of these meetings, our first 2 meetings, I think it was Kiana and Nicole and I drove down to the Lower Shore to meet with the Worcester County Jail and the Wicomico County Jail. And in both meetings, they started off very kind of defensive and they just didn't seem interested. They were going to just give us some information, take what we had, and like be on our way. Both Kiana and Nicole gave them so much information, so much passion, so much real examples of why this is important and why they are better deliverers of the information than the jail staff, that by the end, not only were they excited, the jails were excited about what they could do more and what they could do better and how they could get a Dropbox and all of these other things, but they were inviting our coalition back to do voter registration in the facilities. And at the start, they were not open to it.
Really?
So, I mean, a huge shout out to Nicole, Kiana, Monica. We have other members of our coalition who have spoke from their heart, from their experience. They're experts at these issues, and they have really moved some of these administrators to make real differences inside. Now, we still have jails that are not very cooperative, and so we need to fix that. We can't have that be an option. We can't, it's not okay that it's up to whether you have a nice warden. And I'm saying that because some of these people are doing it because they actually do believe in, equity or voting rights or something like that. And some are doing it so that they, can say that they do or whatever it is, right? But whatever it is, there are some places that just have no interest in it, and that's not okay. And that, as Antoine said, it's not okay that we have this border where people in Washington, D.C. have a right that right across the, mile down the road, somebody else wouldn't. Similarly, if you're locked up in Harford County, you should not have a more difficult time voting than if you're locked up in Baltimore County or Anne Arundel County or somewhere else. And so that's one of the kind of major projects that we've worked on this year. And before we move on to some of our other work, including the Black Voters Matter vans that we have all around the state right now, I'll pause to see what you all think about some of that work.
That's some great work you guys are doing. Man, so you're saying that this coalition that's ran, that the ladies who are actually at the head of those programs, they appeal more because, of course, those who are closest to the problem is closest to the solution. So when they go in, they're inspiring. They want them to go in now and inspire them doing an actual rally for the vote. Is that what's going to happen the next time?
So we're gonna, I think the plan is more for voter registration activities, voter information, okay. But it is beyond the just registering voters, because what we've heard from our experiences inside and talking to people who are in the jails and prisons that we visited is that even if they have access to voting, they don't have the information that I think you were saying, Queen, earlier, like all the, everything's on TV and all the yard signs, but people who are in certain jails and prisons may not have all of the information, or if they do, it's not necessarily the neutral or kind of, nonpartisan information that they may want to find out more information about who's on the ballot. So there's a lot of questions on the ballot. There's a lot of people running. There's a lot of positions that people don't know, so what's the orphan courts judge, or what's the, register of wills? Some people don't know what the positions, what it really means or what it really does. I know some of those things I still don't know very much about and have to look it up. And so part of this is also getting information and just making this a regular conversation, as we've talked about, in communities, but also inside jails and prisons where, we have people who, again, we've had this intentional misinformation or failure to, clear up the misinformation that, your involvement in the criminal justice system has anything to do with voting, which it has a little bit to do now, because if you're currently incarcerated for a felony conviction, you can't vote. But most of these other connections are gone. So all the people we meet who say, I can't vote, which most of us, everybody hears most people say, I can't vote. And then if you ask why, or if you find out more information, it's probably that, right? And that's, again, it's this intentional misinformation that they allow to keep out there, that keeps people from voting. And so, so Expand the Ballot is going to continue to go behind the walls. continue to advocate to push the laws so that everybody has the right to vote, and we don't have this difference between if you're convicted of a felony or misdemeanor, and then that we have robust voting inside, so that you can have, I envision, ballot boxes and, full voting access inside, same. And to me, equity is not the same. It's that we actually have more options, more flexibility, more information in jails and prisons than we do outside. And right now we're not even close to equality, let alone equity, when it comes to voting, in places of incarceration. And I should also mention that we also have similar issues in nursing homes, in state-run hospitals, and in other places where people are confined.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I really think, in my mindset, as I've been sitting here listening to you, if we really want to get folks who formerly incarcerated, is to make the process behavior emulate voting inside, just like they would do outside. Do you get what I'm saying? They vote inside, bring the take-home machines inside. You bring them to the school, bring them to the jail, emulate the same voting process.
Right.
Children sometimes learn from, people, not even children, people learn from actually actively doing something. So, and it becomes like behavior. So if you've seen voting wherever you go, you've seen your parents do it, you've seen school was out for it, then when you get grown, until you go to do it, you never see it again, especially when you're going through all the things in life. So if you get incarcerated, you're still doing that same voting process. So it's not a foreign process when you come out.
Right.
That's what, if we really want to vote, if we really want folk to vote in jail. You vote at the school. Those damn boxes come. They don't live in the school.
Yep.
Deliver to the jail, set it up, let them vote there. They see it, they do it. They come out, they see it, they do it. Now we work it. Am I wrong?
Yep. I completely agree. And I think the same reasons that they bring them to schools, right? And that they need to bring them there. But also there's other reasons why we have a variety of options, because some options people either trust more or can use better because of anything from certain people with certain disabilities may need to use one type of voting method than the other. If you have limited English proficiency or low reading level, you may need something else. And so for the same reasons, we have all of these options on the outside. That's why we need all of those options for equity purposes. And so that people can say, oh, they may still want to, somebody may still want to vote by mail, but someone else may need a ballot marking device, or someone else may need assistance in filling out their ballot. And we need to have all of those services, just like we do in our polling places, which we'll all, be using tomorrow, or if you early voted, or if you voted by mail.
Well, I'm telling you that I just think that behavior sometimes reflects redundant movements. And so if we really want to, we can start inside. We can, we can even have mark voting for schools. Let children do mark voting, and it might not be for legislation. It might be the same time, and then they vote for something in their school. But that's something that we do. We're showing the civic process. It's a part of what we do all the time. So I just think that is, if we really want people to vote, but really, I don't think we want them to vote. We spend more time trying to quell the vote than to create spaces to vote. I think. What do you think on that, Twan?
I think a lot of systems say where you can and can't, but we need partnerships that can make those places equal for us to use. Because we can do the trainings, we can train people, and then also we can be trained to be vote election judges and things of that nature. So then we can start setting up voter hubs, that brings in more for the comfortability of space, that some may be intimidated to go certain places because of certain deficiencies or just fears of certain things they hadn't done or had the right or anything. But if we have these spaces of hubs that we can open up and do them and have the same electronic systems and all that there, I think it can open up and bring a new number of registration, voters, and then discussions in households, from the family members that's behind the wall, that like their experience, to the family members that went that day, and like just cross action, just talk about who they voted for, why, what's going on, what do you think policies can help, what do you think will change, and let's just hope, let's just keep our fingers crossed and things of that nature. But I think it's a wide layer of ways that a new cycle can be produced and taught and practiced.
I like that.
Amy, like, and I always tell people, like, when we look at these coalitions and look at the work that's being done, you talk about individuals who now can go back in institutions. You talk about policy change that got learned and able to write and still effective around it. You talking about community events and coordinations at different locations: PG County, Baltimore County, Howard County, that these things were going on all that, but then like ideas that were so inspiring were like, how about drivers be to do on weekends, to drive from one part up to another half, and then one come out of Baltimore City and just tour and go to the county, and had these transportations going around while these events was happening and showing up to register people. So I think like that was one of the when that expand the ballot and expanding our thoughts to how to make a ballot reachable and approachable so that people could actually like see it.
Yeah, and I think so that's a good segue to the Black Voters Matter vans, which so Life After Release somehow I somehow don't know exactly the backstory on it, but they were able to secure, I assume it was like a kind of grant request type thing to Black Voters Matter to get 2 of their vans that are large vans and wrapped with images and logos and that sort of thing, custom to Maryland. So with our logos on the back of it and with images from Maryland on the sides of the van. And we have 2 vans that have been on the road now for almost 3 weeks, going across the state to different events to do exactly what you're just saying, and really trying to get out the vote or get out the information about voting, and now getting out the vote and taking the vans intentionally to communities that may have more, have more of this misinformation, is not, have be in need, I guess, of, sorry, all of these words don't sound right, but people who are less engaged in voting, right? And so
Right.
Our partners at Maryland Justice Project, Monica Cooper, she's been leading the charge for driving the vans. And so we have Life After Release that got the vans here and did an amazing job putting together a huge press conference, getting the word out. It was covered by a lot of news sources. And then Maryland Justice Project, who's doing the driving. Lots of us, other organizations supporting in a lot of other ways, including putting materials on the vans, making sure they have support with the, communications plan, that sort of thing. And of course, today I got a message this morning from Nicole Hansen-Mendel from Out for Justice. And Antoine, I'm not sure if you were part of this, but there were like 14 people who were like early this morning getting ready to go like 3 different ways with these couple of vans and doing, just concerted outreach in communities to talk about tomorrow and to remind people that even if you're not registered to vote, you can register to vote tomorrow and you can vote tomorrow. So that's been a really exciting opportunity for us to get around the state, as you were saying, and talk about this. And I'm hoping that there's more of that to come. I mean, it's a big lift to try to have 2 vans all across the state for 3 weeks, especially when we're talking about, a lot of smaller organizations, but it was really incredible. Oh, and before I forget, Expand the Ballot is on Facebook and Twitter. And that's where you can see some of these pictures of the vans across the state and some other photos and information that we're sharing. So check us out on Facebook and Twitter, Expand the Ballot.
So Expand the Ballot. I'm writing it in the chat.
Yeah, coalitions. Forming impact. Forming impact. You got leads. They got coalitions, community safe engagements, span the ballot, value my vote campaign. Like killing it, Shorty. They told us we couldn't.
Right.
That's excellent. I mean,
couldn't. Okay.
And something Queen, you said earlier, it's like the ability, like to me, our partners are experts in many ways, right? They're experts at the lived, experience. They're experts at the law. They're experts at the policy. Antoine was talking about it. He's already said a couple of things in this conversation where I'm like, oh, that makes a ton of sense. Never thought about that. And so it's also like thinking through, hearing from other people's perspectives and lived experience on different ways we can, solve the same problem. And our partners not only can speak more effectively to people who are incarcerated, that seems like an obvious one. More importantly, what I'm saying is they spoke better to the wardens, to the, case managers. They were able to get through because of where they were speaking from in a way that, I'd like to think that I could convince somebody of something, but I just feel like their expertise comes through in a way that when we're talking about the importance of voting when you are in jail or prison, that I can't speak to, like, because I can't, it's not inside of me, so it can't come out of me. And I think we need to value that expertise, and we need to value that at every level. So money, who decides, who speaks, all of those things.
I love that. I call it organic intimacy, where you have this intimate experience and then it organically transcends when you go talk to people about it.
Yes.
You get, so you're intimate to it, but it's still very organic. And so that's why it touches others who wouldn't normally be touched. And so that's what I like about lived experience. It's definitely organic. Well, man, this has been a great conversation. Listen, I got to throw it in again. Election day's tomorrow, 11/8/22. Am I correct? Yeah, 11/8/22. Tomorrow, vote.
And can I do one more plug to a hotline?
What? Let's do it. We got time.
All right. So the ACLU of Maryland has an election protection hotline where folks can call tonight, tomorrow, anytime, any questions you have, anything. Questions about, anything about voting. So any questions, concerns, give us a call. I'm going to say the number a couple of times, but it's 667-219-2625. I think I can drop it in the chat. 617-219-2625. And
24-hour line.
Yep. It's now until polls close tomorrow. And you can even reach us afterwards, but we won't be monitoring as closely. And this is Expand the Ballot. And Antoine, you were part of this, right? It did their own hotline in the primary. And we decided, in order to just kind of conserve some resources for all of the things we were talking about earlier, we're just using the ACLU's hotline. So we are prepared to take calls from anyone, especially if you're talking about anything that we've, been talking about today. You have questions about it, please give us a call, and we will help every voter figure it out and address, look into any concerns anybody might have. So please give us a call.
Let us help. And get some hope, and you can go vote.
Oh, I love it. Get some hope, and you can go vote. Yep. I love it. Listen, this has been a great conversation. I'm glad we were able to, and thank you so much for your perspective, Amy. You're always welcome. This is a platform of information. We're Black centered because we're Black people, but information is something that we can get from anyone. So we really appreciate you coming through to the corner. Many people don't come to the corner, only the leaders. So this is the place where leaders be what they want to see. So we created some community tonight. I just appreciate your genius and the information and also your humility. You laid a little humility on us, and we love that too. And I'm glad you have worked with my amazing co-host Twan. He's a great guy, and so I'm glad he invited you. Come back anytime. So, Twan, you want to say anything before we get out of here?
Say, just call the hotline. Go register to vote. Look at what's on there, learn about what's on there, research what's on there, because it could be hurting you, but it could be affecting you for the next 10 years. So help is here, help is needed, but you can vote and be the help to make the help be needed.
That's it. Love it. Love it. Vote tomorrow. Amy, we want to get you Amy's jewel. Drop a jewel on us, and then we're going to be boxed up and out. So drop that jewel. Amy's jewel. We don't have no music for the jewel. We'll have next time you come, we'll have some music for the jewel.
So girl.
I just want to give a shout out to my partners at the Expand the Ballot Coalition. I hope you all check them out and follow. If you have money, donate. If you can volunteer, volunteer. I think it's just an incredible coalition. I'm so glad to be here talking about, what they've done. And I'm just beaming. My cheeks are all red for how much of a honor it's been to talk to you, Queen, and to be with you, Antoine, and hope this is just like the beginning of working together.
Oh, love it. That's what we want to do. When you guys are doing something, call us out. Let us come through and talk about it. Let us come through and also let us help you market. Anything for the community. We all win when we all participate. Remember that. We all win from that. So it has been a great pre-voters eve. Spending it with two great people. One of my favorite people, Twan, and Amy, one of my new favorite people. So we had a real good time tonight. And we're going to say deuces to the black boxes because we boxed up and out. Can I get them deuces, Amy and Twan? We out of here. Ow! Deuces. Good night, y'all.